Go ahead and start recording. So happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. The series that Tony has been putting together over the course of the last several months has really wanted to dive in on something that, they don't necessarily teach you when you first start doing real estate, which is dealing with people and all different kinds of people, which you would think that they would do considering how much of a relationship and face-to-face business real estate is. And so this has been a tremendous series that I think a lot of agents should be able to understand just the impact of it on their everyday lives as well as their professional lives. And so I'm sad to see this series ending, but thank you so much to Tony for being here today. We're going to be wrapping up using psychology to build instant rapport today with the analytical behavioral profile. And so, as always, feel free to utilize the chat should you have any questions. I'll be asking questions throughout today's room. And so we've got about 32-ish minutes together, and so we're going to make the most of them and give Tony the time and attention and dedication that he deserves. So Tony, I'm going to pass it over to you now, and so
Awesome.
you go ahead and get started.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining the class. This is, like she was saying, it's our last of the four behavior characteristics that we're going to cover today. And I'm just going to give a little bit of refresher or just bring us up to date. The psychology of behavior characteristics or behavior styles is basically the study of how we behave, how each of us behave. And in that study, they found that there was four distinct styles that of people's behavior. And those four style, you have a primary, and then there's a little bit of a bleed over into a secondary style. We've covered we covered let's see, we covered the driver, the amiable, the expressive, and now today we're doing the analytical. The analytical is a little bit different than the other three. The other three are kind of, the driver doesn't want all the facts. He just wants you to deliver. He wants you to get straight to the point. The entertainer is all about him being the center of attention and hey, I want everyone to listen to me, and he's the talker and the schmoozer and works the room, and he wants you to acknowledge who he is as well. The amiable person is someone that always thought this is a person that everybody loves, right? This is the kind person, looks for relationships, makes their decisions on touchy feely. How's this feel? You may experience this person as a buyer. You walk into a house and they go, oh, this feels really good here. I feel good energy here. That's that type of person. The analytical is quite different. Like I mentioned, they're quite different because these people like to look at data. They want to see everything. They won't just take your word for it. If you say, hey, this is what you should be able to sell your house for, they're gonna ask you how you came up with that, and you're going to have to show them very detailed breakdown of why you think their house is worth what it's worth, and give them a full report. They want to see all the data. These are the people that go through, paralysis through analysis kind of thing. They will sit there and just keep going over stuff because maybe they don't believe it, or maybe they just want more data. But this is a kind of person that when you do a listing presentation, that you've got to be very detailed in all the steps you're going to take. I mean, list them out, show it to them, present it. These are the people that take a long time to really show them all the data. Let me see which one this is. Okay. Hold on. Let me share with you. Yeah. So this is kind of their strength. Not kind of. This is the strength. They're precise, adaptable, thorough, systematic, cautious, uh, um, and then their possible weakness is they're too careful. They're obsessive compulsive, which is I think is a really good description of these people, because they're really into the numbers, and they'll dive into numbers and to reports or whatever, and just obsess over them. These are the people that will show you that you've got a typo in your presentation, or you've got a typo in a listing. Like I said, analysis paralysis. They're very suspicious. They're finicky. They're not touchy feely at all. They're very you know, they distance themselves from other people. They're not, this isn't someone you slap on the back or you hug when you first meet them. This is someone that you keep your distance and you shake their hands. And any questions on that?
Yeah, Tony, I have one. Out of all of the skill sets that you just went over on that list, which one do you think will be the most valuable within the lens of the real estate industry? And how does that kind of contribute to an agent's success? Should you encounter an agent that has that personality type, or a client that has that personality type?
Well, I think both. I mean, I've met agents that have that personality type, maybe a little bit of a bleed over to something else, but you're gonna find clients like this all the time. These are I mean, I've had these where I had to make sure I had plenty of information for them. Where and I had to tell them where I pulled my data from. These people are slow to take action.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. So let's see. Let's go in how they see the world. I always find this to be, interesting. Look how they look at themselves. Very thorough, detail oriented, takes too long to reach decisions. This is how they see themselves. So, and this is how I see them too. They're so worried about every little detail that they kind of, they don't see the forest because of the trees. So these are very difficult people to get a direct answer from. These people won't give you an answer today. These are, I got to think about it. I got to go over the data. I got to, they look at the expressive, gives claims, no evidence, too unstructured, not prepared, gives fluff, not substance. The driver, too overbearing, in too big of a hurry, not accurate, claim oriented. And then the amiable, overly concerned about human side of things, not concerned enough about the task. Mm-hmm. This is huge, how they see themselves, and what you have to do. I mean, just look at the other, the expressive, how they look at the driver, how they look at the amiable and see that they're not a person. They are a data person. And so to drive that home, you have to do your homework and you have to give them all the data.
So if
Any
you have a
questions?
client that is more of the analytical type, if they end up taking too long to reach decisions, do you kind of have to take on more of the role of a driver as like somebody that's going to help kind of guide them towards decision making? Or how would you kind of approach that situation, especially if, you're showing them a listing and they're not really jiving with it, but they're going back and forth. They're not really feeling very decisive about it. How would you handle that from a psychological perspective? Do you kind of shift your behavioral personality based on that? Or is there something that you can kind of do as the agent to help guide the process along so that it's not getting stuck, because of their indecisiveness?
Well, with all these behaviors, you're kind of modifying your behavior at the very beginning because you really don't want to, you don't want to let on who you are. I think I said it earlier. You don't want to let all your crazy out at the first meeting. So you're kind of doing poker face, trying to figure out who they are and what's important to them. And with that, um, if you present it or you're showing and you're getting nowhere and they're taking a long time, well, it's obviously there's a piece of data that you've missed, and there's no reason why you can't ask. Just straight out ask, hey, I've noticed, I feel like I'm missing something here. Is you know I You told me this, and this, and this, and I've given you this, but but I feel like I'm missing something. Or are we stuck somewhere? Is there someplace? Do you need more information on this? Where are we? And just kind of bring them back around to interact with you, because a lot of these people will keep it inside and they won't tell you. So you've got to go and kind of poke them a little bit and say, you know, I take the blame, put it on your shoulders and say, hey, have I missed something? I've one of my agents now is he's got a client that he's kind of pulling his hair out because he thought he knew what his client wanted, and this person's a very analytical person. And he thought he knew what they wanted, but now all of a sudden they're all over the place. They're looking at stuff that's nowhere near the criteria that they first discussed. And he's like, "What do I do?" And I said, "You just got to sit down with them again and say, hey, this is the criteria you gave me. It looks like we've shifted our thought process to a different criteria, but I don't know what that criteria is. Let's go back through and go through everything and see where I'm missing this. What am I missing?" And just kind of try to bring everybody back together. That kind of works with everybody, but especially with the analytical, to basically say, hey, I've showed you 10 properties that kind of checked all the boxes. What am I missing here? Where did I go wrong?
My next question is more so as if the analytical is an agent that's kind of having this behavioral personality, but how should an analytical approach negotiation strategies and tactics in real estate transactions, knowing the positives and negative characteristics that they have? How would somebody that's, say, much more attention to detail negotiate in a transaction? Sorry, the train is, I don't know if you guys can hear it
I
right
can't hear
Oh, thank God.
it.
Loud, very loud.
Um, you know, I think this would be one of the tougher people to negotiate with because they've done their homework and their data. You know, I have a client that's I call him Mr. OCD because he will spend all night looking at comparables. He's an investor, flips houses, and he'll go and pick out his own comparables. And he will spend he'll he won't sleep. He'll tell me, "Oh, I stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning looking at comparables," and I go, "Why?" Which a click of a button, I can send you everything that you want. I can put in all the all the criteria and area and send it to you in seconds. You don't have to sit there and look, but he looks at every picture. He looks at the details. He looks at the size. He does all these comparables and these calculations and square footage um, and he's kind of tough. I mean, at the end of the day, you basically have to kind of give in to them because they they normally have a really good argument because they're going to come up with a whole list of why that price is like that, and they're hard to get off of that price or hard to get off of their decision. So you have to buck them or to get them to listen to you. You've got to point out a flaw in their data,
I
or
think
give them
too,
additional data that they didn't get.
I think too, based on the different sessions we've had about psychology, is that the analytical is quite a bit like the driver. I know you shared the graph of where kind of
Yep.
all of these personality types fall. And I think when you're working with somebody like the analytical, you kind of have to approach it as if you're working with the driver, that you have to not like be condescending towards them, but you kind of have to placate them a little bit and just be like, you know what, like you're right. Like I see what you're doing here. I see like how your numbers are looking. I see why you think this transaction needs to be have X, Y, and Z criteria. I understand all of that. But then you kind of have to direct them a little bit as well too, not to the point where they realize that they're being misdirected a little bit, but you kind of have to know who you're talking with and like you said, offer different perspectives, but in a way that's clear, concise, confident. You never want to appear as if you don't know what you're talking about with these people, because I feel like if you do, that's a situation that you'll find yourself in where they just are like tearing apart your argument or whatever it is you're trying to say. And so I think the best way to deal with an analytical or a driver is just having a very structured point of view, having facts, having evidence to back up your claim or your argument, saying you gave me this list of criteria for these listings. That's why I have X, Y, and Z. They have this, like the crime rate is this in this neighborhood. They've got X amount of great schools. Provide them ratings, provide them facts. Somebody like the expressive or the amiable is probably going to be more interested in like, oh, what kind of restaurants or shops are around? Like, give me a holistic picture of the neighborhood. Whereas, the analytical or the driver just wants to know numbers of how the picture looks rather than what the picture is comprised of, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Absolutely. And like you said, you put it more eloquently than I could, but you got to throw a little bit of a wrench into their system or into their thought process. Not to point out that they were flawed, but like you said, give a different perspective. For instance, they're looking at comparables that's in another neighborhood. Well, that neighborhood might be above the neighborhood. It might be in a different school zone. So you have to pull those things out and go, well, that's a good point, but you got to consider this as well. That's a different school zone, or those are newer homes. Your home is 15 years older than that, so there's a difference in that. Also, you might have an HOA. The homes that you're comparing don't have HOAs, so there's a different. You have to break it down like that, and you got to find those things. So yeah, so it's just someone you've got to be very prepared for, and be able to back up your data with facts. And yeah, they're kind of they're a lot like the driver and the part that you can't say, I think this would be good for you. The I think or I believe are not powerful enough for them. You have to say, I'm confident. These are good numbers, and I've done my research, and here it is. I back this. Here's my data to back up what I'm saying. Unlike the driver, you're saying, you're giving him your commitment and confidence that you're going to do what he's asking you or she's asking you to do, and with confidence and and strength.
I'm curious to know, and Tony, you may not have the answers for this just because it's somewhat of a little bit of a niche question. They probably don't even have any research on this, but I wonder whether or not somebody like the Analytical would be more interested in commercial real estate or investment opportunities versus residential, just because they're so used to working with numbers and that meticulousness. Like, they're more likely to have a career in like law or STEM or something that's very highly analytically driven, no pun intended. And so I think if they're going to get into an industry like real estate, that is such a people and relationship building business, of whether or not that type of behavioral profile is going to be more likely to be working with like corporate buyers and sellers versus like residential mom and pop type.
Absolutely, because you're taking the personality or the attachment away. You're looking at strict numbers, and how that number affects the bottom line. So yeah, I definitely agree that you're going to see a lot of investors or agents that are more towards that commercial, where it doesn't matter that whether the building's pretty or ugly, is will this give me a cap rate that makes it a good investment, and can I take the data off that investment and be able to sell that to somebody, um, you know through that. Again, these people are really good with their own people, right? They do really well. They don't do well with people who are, who are like the expressive, or the driver, and the amiable. So they tend to want to be with, birds of a feather flock together kind of thing. So yeah, they like being more in that business. It's not about how I feel. It's about, do the numbers work?
Mm-hmm. I know we've got a few minutes left, and so there's one more question that I kind of wanted to ask you, more from your perspective. Disregard all of the behavioral and personality profiles, but in your business, how often do you find the balance of analyzing a situation versus intuition, and what has that experience and that balance been like for you? Has there been situations where you've kind of had to rely a little bit more on your intuition and your gut feeling versus what the facts are telling you, or has it always for you personally been more of, I am driven more so by objective facts, this is how I choose to analyze a situation?
Personally, I'm more of the gut feeling.
Mhm.
I see something, and it's not just gut; it's experience and knowing an area
Mhm.
to where I can see something and say this is a good deal. I I have this. My wife and I do this thing back and forth, right? Where I'll see a property that I think is a great deal, and I come home and say, "Hey, I saw this property today. We should buy this." And she reminds me, "Hey, you sell real estate, you don't buy, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's a really good deal. We can make some money off this. This will be a good flip, or this will be a good rent and hold kind of property. What do you think?" And a lot of times she shoots me down and reminds me that I'm selling real estate, not buying, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes, well, the majority of the time, my gut's right. I go by and say, "Hey, remember that property we looked at? Look, it sold for $500,000. We could have bought it for 150. Look, they just made all the profit that I thought I should make. I told you we." And she tells me to shut up a lot because I'll drive by and go, "We should have bought that house. We should have bought that house. We should have bought that one. I knew that was going to be a good property." And but you can't. She's like, "This isn't Monopoly. You can't buy everything." You know.
There's no boardwalk for you to be able to just
Yeah, exactly.
run and flip it.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I tend to go, and I think it has to do with, sorry. I
You're
think it has to do with um just the knowledge that I've gained over time, that I get a good feeling about something. I can look at a house, I don't care how ugly it looks. Um I can I can look at it and go, okay, does it need a lot? May need a roof. I can, in my head, I can tell you what it would probably cost, plus or minus 10% to rehab the property, and what it would go for in the neighborhood. Now, I've been wrong too. I've had gone on listing appointments where the seller wants a much higher price than what I'm presenting,
Mhm.
and I'll tell them, "Hey, it's your candy store. I'll list it for whatever you want, but if we don't do anything, if there's no activity, we got to revisit that, and it'll sell for a higher price." And I'm dumbfounded on why it sold for a higher price.
No, I love that. I always want to make sure that I ask these questions because I think it's interesting to get different perspectives on it. And so, Lila, I'm going to ask you the same question as well. Too. First of all, remind me again how long you've been in the real estate industry, and in any of your transactions or listings that you've closed. Also, remind me if you're a buyer or seller's agent too, because that's important. Um, how you've kind of balanced being analytical versus trusting your intuition more, and which one do you kind of lean into a little bit more?
Great question. So I got my license in December, so it's been about 4-ish, going on 5 months. But I've been with the team since June, so I was kind of interning and shadowing. So it feels like a lot longer. But my transactions thus far have been on the buyer end. I'm open to being a seller's agent. I just haven't quite gotten there yet. And as far as whether I'm more intuitive or analytical, I'm not sure if I fully, so I guess my response would just be like, I really try to feed off of who I'm working with. I have worked with clients who are more analytical, and like I know that they'll find more value with me doing detailed CMAs and showing like an appreciation report for the last 5 years, and what are homes selling for in this zip code over asking price. Like that kind of data really makes them feel more secure, whereas other clients are more like, I want to feel like I have a friend in this process. And if you think it's a good idea, it's more, I don't know, personality or friendship. And so I hope that answers the question. I'm not sure if it did.
It does. It does. And I think that kind of encompasses everything that we've talked about, is making sure that you shift accordingly based on the type of client that you're working with, because, obviously nobody is the same. Everybody's got their own distinct personality to it. These profiles are just the way that we can overarchingly categorize all of them. And so, yeah, no, that's all I wanted to ask to kind of finish out this segment. So, do you have any last minute questions? Tony, is there anything else that you want to go over that you haven't had the chance to yet? I wanna be respectful of everyone's time.
Well, the biggest thing or aha that I get out of this is that we all do this naturally. We're born with the ability to kind of change our personality and the way we approach other people. It's a natural thing that we already do. I think, and one of them, I was telling a story about one of my clients had met my parents, and my parents, both of my parents have passed, but when they were alive, they had a very heavy Spanish accent. I mean, very heavy. And as this client of mine was talking to them, I noticed that he developed a Spanish accent while he was talking to them. So he had it, and I thought it was comical, And at first you look at it and go, is he making fun of my parents? But it wasn't. It's just that psychologically you start to adapt to this other person to feel like, to make that bond, and we do it so naturally. So this study doesn't really teach you anything that you don't already know. It just helps you harness what we have internally, what our subconscious mind can do, and how it works, and how you can kind of manipulate it to help you build that bond with people. It's been one of the best things that I ever employed into my sales career, and it just becomes second nature to you, just by keeping, being alert to it. Just understanding it and being alert to it. You can pick up their personalities like right away, instantly, and just you can see things that they do, or just what kind of car they drive, what kind of they dress, and these are things that you just start to pick up.
Absolutely. And I think with that, the Using Psychology to Build Instant Rapport series is done. And so I really want to thank you again, Tony, so much for coming in and sharing your wisdom with everyone. And I want to thank you, Lila. I know you've been very consistent in showing up for these rooms and just wanting to soak up as much knowledge as possible. And so I think you've got the right approach here. And I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. We will have more rooms going on throughout the coming weeks and next month. And so this will not be the last time we have Tony in rooms, but thank you again so much, everyone. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their Tuesday.
Thank you too. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to share some of my knowledge.
Of course.